people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the Sky Nicholson versus Yuli Hangaluna WBC interim title fight that Sky Nicholson won by scores of 98-92 on two judges' scorecards and 97-93, doing what she normally does, staying on her toes, pot-shotting from the outside, managing the distance, stepping off to her own right, which is usually her opponent's left, to steer clear of their lead while simultaneously whacking them upside the head with check hooks, as to not give them a clear target, as to not stay in front of them for too long, as to maintain striking distance without being in line to be hit. Sky Nicholson is very good at what she does. Those are the flowers that I can give her. Not dissimilar from what I say about Devin Haney. He's very good at what he does. Coincidentally, they share the same base style. But like with Devin, with Sky, even if she's very good at what she does, that doesn't make it entertaining. When a pure boxer is having it all their way, the fight is very monotone and anticlimactic. The pure boxers, like Sky Nicholson, not greedy with their work, not overly ambitious. They're not going to try but for so many punches. It's really only one or two punches at a time, from a safe distance, always maintaining distance, always being careful and cautious and calculated, to where when a pure boxer is winning a fight, and winning a fight wide, that means there's not a lot going on. And not a whole lot happened yesterday in Nicholson versus Luna. Each round was a carbon copy of the last. To Sky Nicholson's credit, Yuli Hangaluna was a little bit taller and a little bit longer than I thought she'd be. I thought that Sky would have a clear advantage in terms of height and length. That didn't appear to be the case. Yuli Hangaluna looked about eye level to Sky, so it is somewhat impressive that Sky was able to control her as easily and as often as she did, though as stated, the fight was anticlimactic, offering up very little in terms of drama and ebbs and flows. It's really just Sky managing the distance, getting in with a punch or two, and controlling Yuli Hangaluna. Now this fight, this victory in securing the WBC interim title, if nothing else, lines up Sky to fight for the full one. After Ellie Scottney and Mayeli Flores meet for the inaugural undisputed title fight next year, Sky is supposed to, in theory, get the winner. Although, even if she is fortunate enough to get the winner, that would put the fight between Sky and the winner of that fight in the second or third quarter of next year at the earliest, because first they have to fight each other, and God forbid there are any injuries, cuts, bumps, or scrapes, anything that could delay the fight with Sky, and that's if Sky actually gets the fight. Because what if Ellie Scottney wins, and what if Ellie decides to immediately afterwards move up and vacate all the titles she's won? That would leave Sky with little more to do than pick up the pieces and pick up a vacant title or vacant titles. It's one way to become a champion, though not necessarily the best way. Picking up a vacant title is not a substitute for prying it away from the reigning champion, though oddly enough, I like Sky's chances to become a two-weight world champion more that way than actually fighting Ellie. Ellie's got a lot more bells and whistles to her game than Sky Nicholson, at least for me, to where if they do fight, I think Ellie beats her. Sky stands a much better chance of becoming a two-weight world champion now that she's campaigning as a super bantamweight if she doesn't have to fight Ellie than if she does. But if she does, it is a big opportunity. It's one of the more high-profile fights that she can have in the super bantamweight division, so it's all about picking your poison. I think Sky wants the fight. I think Sky wants the opportunity to beat Ellie Scottney. I just don't think she can. Though congratulations to her, the prediction stuck. I anticipated that she would outpoint Yuli Hangluna for the WBC interim title, and she did. In the men's lightweight division, former champion Joe Cordina took on youngster Gabe Flores for what was the WBO interim title to line himself up for an Abdullah Mason fight. I anticipated that Joe would win, but I thought that Joe would stop Gabe. I thought that he would knock him out. In what was Joe's second consecutive victory on the bounce after having been stopped by Anthony Kakache in the super featherweight division, having since moved up to lightweight, he's won 2 fights in a row. In this one, he was often the one pressing forward and initiating the action. Gabe Flores responding in kind as best as he could, often being pinned down on the ropes, attempting to sidle away, and letting go of counters while he did it. Counters that often came up just short of the mark. Enough to get Joe Cordina to back off momentarily, but not enough to make a dent. Not enough to do any damage. Gabe Flores, a fighter who I remember getting battered at the hands of Luis Lopez and outpointed by Giovanni Cabrera some fights ago, some fights later. They used to be with Top Rank, though not anymore, dropping that decision to Joe Cordina for being little more than second best. Quite reactionary. Gabe Flores was not in control of anything that was happening in this fight, so much as just reacting to what's happening. As Joe closes the distance and tries for punches, sometimes stringing together combinations, Gabe responding with combinations of his own that are falling short of the mark. They're not really scoring blows. He's not really getting in. He's just trying to shake off the guy in front of him. And that's the way the fight played out. Now, I didn't see anything in Joe Cordina yesterday that Abdullah Mason, newly crowned WBO champion, I didn't see anything about Joe's approach yesterday that Abdullah needs to worry about. Preliminary thoughts, I think Abdullah Mason stops Joe Cordina. I think he knocks him out when the time comes, and the time will, because the virtue of yesterday's fight was lining yourself up to fight for the WBO title. Abdullah Mason's got it. Now, maybe this is a fight that lands on one of Turki El Al Sheikh's Saudi shows. Remember that Abdullah Mason is a Riyadh season ambassador, and he's fought on a Riyadh season show at least once. Joe didn't look impressive yesterday, and maybe Abdullah didn't either with Sam Noakes in what was his fight for the vacant WBO title. But I think that Sam Noakes fight and how difficult it was made Abdullah an even better fighter. I don't actually think that Joe Cordina can push and press and pressure Abdullah Mason as well as Sam Noakes just did. I have Abdullah winning the fight. Joe Cordina is not a pressure guy like Sam Noakes, and physically, I don't think he's as physically strong as Sam Noakes, and I don't think he can land with the same authority to get Abdullah Mason's attention. I think it would have been a more encouraging omen if Joe would have knocked out Gabe yesterday. Then you'd have to say, well, he packs a big enough punch that he knocked out that guy. But he didn't. Since moving up from 130 up to 135, Joe's power doesn't look to be what it was at 130. Both fights he's won as a lightweight have been points decisions. I think Abdullah gets him. I think Abdullah stops him. But credit to him for securing the victory yesterday. I felt that he would beat Gabe Flores, and he did. Now it's time for him to get beat by Abdullah Mason. In the main event, we saw a battle of the unbeatens, an unbeaten Diego Pacheco versus then unbeaten Kevin Lele Sajo in what was another WBO interim title fight. And Diego started off the fight well enough. First 4 rounds. Circling Kevin Lele Sajo, using the jab to control the distance at which the fight was being fought while making himself a moving target, using his height, using his length, and doing all the right things at the start. But as the fight progresses and starts to get into the middle, the relentless pace of Kevin Lele Sajo, I think, started to wear on Diego Pacheco. And that's the thing about pressure fighters. That's one thing about their game I think they don't get enough credit for. Maybe they're not as subtle as some other boxers, but they can test other aspects of your game, your cardio, your fitness, your power, and whether or not you can actually keep them off. I think that was Diego's problem yesterday. In spite of everything he was doing, he just wasn't landing with enough authority to get Kevin's respect, to get him to calm the fuck down. Kevin was relentless. In the buildup of the fight, I described him as another Christian Mabili. Him and Christian are cut from the same cloth. They fight the same way, except I would argue Kevin packs more single punching power than Christian Mabili. And I think we saw that yesterday in the 8th round when he floored Diego Pacheco off a massive left hook, a la Joe Frazier. Well, that's who he resembled out there. Fighting at a slight crouch, chin tucked, bending at the waist and knees, bringing massive looping punches over. Spun him like a top is what he did. Diego Pacheco resembled a mop falling over when it misses the adjacent wall. I mean, he spun him all the way around, and at the end of that round, you saw Diego return to his corner, tell his corner that it was an off-balance shot.
Whatever the fuck it was, it put you down.
This was the trial I said that Diego would undergo, that if he can't manage the distance well enough against Kevin, Kevin's gonna crash the pocket, pressure him, push him back. Even worse, that even though Diego was the noticeably taller, longer, and younger fighter, he didn't look physically stronger than Kevin Lele Sajo, who's not a big super middleweight. He looks a smaller guy than Mabili.
He's pushing Diego around, forcing him to fight the fight on his terms. That looked more like a Kevin Lele Sajo fight than a Diego Pacheco fight, though. Oddly enough, Diego won it. I'd say he won it by
8-4.
8 rounds.
8 rounds going to Diego with 4 rounds going to Kevin, but you have to factor in the additional point that Kevin Lele Sajo did score a knockdown. Simply tallying rounds on paper doesn't really tell the story of the fight, that even rounds that Diego won, it wasn't easy to win those rounds. He let his hands go, but didn't seem able to put a dent in Kevin Lele Sajo, at least not in the middle of the fight where he struggled the most. It's not really until the 11th that Kevin Lele Sajo starts to wilt, starts to look hurt, as Diego unloads a salvo of punches on him towards the end of it.
Looks like that was the only time that Diego came close to knocking down and maybe knocking out Kevin Lele Sajo, but credit to Kevin's durability because he never lost his footing. He was never off his feet. I gave Diego the last 2, the 11th and the 12th, and that was enough for him to win it, though not in spectacular fashion.
Nobody walked away impressed yesterday with what they saw from Diego Pacheco. Now, I don't want to be too hard on him just because he labored a bit and just because he got knocked down. Need I remind you, Abdullah Mason, a fighter that we're all very high on, got knocked down 2 times in that fight with the guy that had the bad haircut.
I forgot his name, but you remember, Abdullah Mason hit the deck 2 times in that fight. So if Diego Pacheco hits the deck once, it's not the end of the world.
And remember that Abdullah Mason just labored with a very game Sam Noakes. So that if Diego Pacheco labors with a very game Kevin Lele Sajo, can you really be hard on him for it? It was an acid test. And it wasn't one that Diego necessarily passed with flying colors, but he powered through it. He did enough.
Kevin Lele Sajo has effectively announced himself to the world, a little-known Cameroonian, French-based fighter who most Americans likely were not familiar with before yesterday, but now they know. Kevin is a handful. Kevin is cut from the same cloth as a Christian Mabili with arguably more single punching power. So if he's in a fight, you know it's going to be a good one.
And there are any number of fights that you could make for Kevin Lele Sajo in today's super middleweight division that I often describe as one of the deeper divisions in boxing right now. There are any number of contenders and challengers.
You could mix and match the names and get a good fight every single time. Sadjo versus Munguia, Sadjo versus Melenkuziev, Sadjo versus Bruno Surace.
You could do that one in France. You could do Sadjo versus Mabili, Sadjo versus Shiraz, Charlo, Plant. There are a lot of guys at 168, and Kevin Lele Sajo makes for an interesting fight with any of them. Over to Diego, who remains unbeaten and in position with the WBO. This was Diego Pacheco's first fight without Jose Benavidez and his new corner, which is really a guy who was already there, according to reports. He was already a part of Diego's training team. He's basically been promoted to head trainer, though in his defense, it's not like Diego was looking all that great his last two bouts in the Steven So Old Nelson fight, the more recent Trevor McCumbee fight, that if he didn't look great yesterday, well, he hasn't been looking great. And the recommendation for a lot of people, at least on the panel yesterday, is that Diego needs a more experienced trainer, maybe a Rudy Hernandez who trains Junto Nakatani, or what about Manny Robles? We're always singing his praises and talking about him, or what about Buddy McGirt? He seems to do well with long and limber fighters that use the jab. Fighters like Diego, that perhaps Diego moving forward, to get to that next level, he's gonna need more than what he's got right now.
He's in a deep division, and he hasn't been looking the part the last 2 or 3 fights. As stated, I don't want to be too hard on him because he experienced some adversity. He is stepping up in class after all, and that's gonna happen. He's not the first young, unbeaten fighter who's been knocked on his ass and had to go through something. It's not the end of the world. He eked out the win yesterday, but I'd feel a lot better about his future if he had someone more experienced in his corner.
And there has since been some interesting intel that has come out post-fight that we will discuss in another video. For now, congratulations to Diego Pacheco for securing his position via the WBO, eking out the win, and surviving some adversity, but he needs to do better.